rolling on this one. All right. Can you give me some claps just for the camera?
Don't want to do 3. Just in case.
All right, good, bro. We're going. I might have to make some adjustments as we're going, but I think we'll be all right for the most part. All right, so basically, I'm just going to have you paint a picture for the audience. So the questions starting off are going to be mostly about you, and then we're going to kind of gradually go through and get into the meat and potatoes and everything. So where are you from?
Originally grew up in L.A.
I'm sorry. When I ask a question, repeat the question, and then follow you. So if I say where are you from, and you say I'm from, so you know what I'm saying. That way, it's more, it's easier because when I'm editing this,
Yeah, I got it.
Hear me. Got it. All right, so we'll start that again.
Take 2.
Where are you from?
I was originally born in Denver, but grew up in L.A. That's take 3. How can I word that? I was born in Denver, but I was raised in Los Angeles, actually Compton, California.
And so how long did you live, I guess, in California? How long were you out there for?
Lived in California up until I was 10 years old.
Okay. And then where did you move from there?
From California, we moved to Colorado, a little town called Dacono, Colorado. And after we lived in Colorado for a while, grew up and left Colorado and moved away from Colorado.
Okay. And at some point you found yourself in Florida, right?
Yep. Yeah, I moved to Florida in the year 2000.
Okay. What'd you do for a living?
Well, my primary living, I was a general contractor. I didn't build new houses, but I did a lot of insurance work when there was any type of damage to buildings, any type of structural damage, anything that was insurance related that required repairs. That's what I did as a primary job. But I also worked as a paramedic in the 90s, and one of our shifts was like a 48-hour shift, and then you have the rest of the week. So I also did the general contracting full-time, ran paramedic part-time. That was, like I said, in the 90s. I got out of the paramedics. It was a little stressful, a lot of crap you have to put up with, but decided to get out of it.
Okay, so let's say that there's no Ghost of Carmel Manor or anything like that, just you on your own. What do you do with your free time? What do you like to do? What's your favorite hobby, or what is it that took up a lot of your time and a lot of your attention before?
I can't answer that question. Okay. And the reason why I say that, there's a workers' comp case that's might be going to litigation.
Okay.
But
just for fun? I mean, you just no hobbies, nothing like that, or
what are you talking about right now or before?
Before.
Oh, before. I didn't have a whole lot of hobbies in my younger adult life because I had to work a lot of hours raising 6 kids. So you didn't have an opportunity to have a whole lot of hobbies.
That's a good answer.
But what hobbies I did have, I had with my children when they became older, such as, we build go-karts together. I had a pleasure boat. We'd go out on the boating and, stuff like that. But, a lot of outdoor activities. But as far as actual personal hobbies, there was just no time for them.
When did you meet your wife?
Met my current wife, back in 1995.
Okay. And would you consider Let me see if I can figure a way to ask. Let me ask, how did you meet?
I met my wife. They had some issues with the house they lived in, and I was called out there to do some repairs on it. And um, her parents liked me. We became friends, and then they invited me over, and things went from there.
And what do you think the happiest day of your life was?
Now, that's
Tough one.
anything that has to do with my kids, when they're born, their accomplishments. I would say it all narrows down to my kids and my grandkids. You know, my grandchildren born, those are very happy moments.
Um, so you had your family,
Mm-hmm.
and let me ask what your family life was like. So, like in other words, like the principles you kind of followed to raise your family, like church, integrity, friendships, values, that kind of thing.
Um, Geez. Family life was extremely busy with 6 kids. Um, there's not really a whole lot I can go into. I mean, it's just,
Would you
you know,
consider yourself? And if the answer is yes, you can just say I would consider myself, and then follow up. Would you consider yourself to be a very normal American family?
I'd consider, yeah, we are a very normal American family.
Um, if you had 3 to 4 words that you could use to describe yourself, what would those 3 to 4 words be?
Extremely to the point.
What brought you out to Maine?
My wife's originally from Maine, and her parents moved back to Maine here. And my daughter, when she got out of high school, moved to Maine here to be close to her grandparents. And my wife and my oldest daughter wanted to move up to Maine. They wanted to leave Florida, so we moved here to Maine.
So, how did you come across the Lamb House, and when did you and your family decide you were going to live here?
We moved here to Maine in 2012, and when we first moved here to save money, and because when you move to a place, I've never been to Maine before until I moved here, and when you move to a place, money can be a little tight to start out. And so we lived in a camper that we had for 2 years, and after 2 winters in that camper, no more. My wife worked at what was called Dick's Mini Mart back in those days, and there's this house that came up for rent that was next door to the Mini Mart, and we had one vehicle, so I used that vehicle to drive to work, and my wife was right next door to her job, so we decided to rent this house known as the Lamb House.
And during that time, and when you answer this, my thoughts on such and such were during that time. What were your thoughts on the paranormal?
When I first moved into this house, I had no interest, no thoughts, no beliefs in the paranormal.
Just didn't believe in it at all. Had no concept or no idea. Didn't put any stock into it at all.
I believe there is a spirit realm, and I believed in that spirit realm that all types of hauntings were either evil spirits. I did not believe that so-called hauntings were actually humanoid spirits. I didn't believe that. And it's something that I never really paid attention to. It's nothing that I studied into. The paranormal was not really on my list of importance because I felt like I already understood what it was all about, and it was something not to be messed with.
So So when did you start noticing things were a little strange at this house?
We moved into this house, and the next morning, I was getting ready for work right here in this room. And when I was getting ready for work, there was a little knick-knack horse that flew off the dresser and landed on the bed right in front of me. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. I set the horse back up on the dresser, and I was thinking, well, maybe, this house is old. Maybe the floor is kind of moving, and with me moving around the room, and it caused that horse to fall off the dresser. Well, I put the horse right back where it was sitting. I was jumping up and down in the room, moving around, it wouldn't even budge. And I thought that was strange. I went downstairs and told my wife something strange happened upstairs. I was getting ready for work, and the horse flew off the dresser and landed on the bed. That was my first incident that caused me to question something strange in this house. However, I've always thought that there was some type of logical explanation. It was not paranormal related in my head. It was something to do with possibly the house movement or some kind of explanation why it did that. When we first moved into this house, I know I heard voices at night when I was in bed. That's when I first started noticing voices. It's like the TV was on, and I know the TV shows. I watch Everybody Loves Raymond almost every single night, and I know exactly what's said in them, and I can almost quote them. And I heard voices that didn't go with the show. Did you guys hear that? Okay. I heard voices that didn't go with the show. And I would pause the DVD and start listening. And I remember in one case, I kept hearing the voices. And I was thinking, well, maybe somebody's downstairs talking, and I just kind of blew it off. But later on, I found out, no, those were actually disembodied voices. Like I said, I've always had some explanation why there were voices. But when I started noticing something wasn't right is when I was upstairs in this room, and I heard loud talking downstairs. I heard movement, and I heard walking up the steps. And it's like I heard the walking up the steps, but I'm like, whoa, who's coming up the steps? They should be up at the top by now. And I got off the bed and I walked over to the steps. Nobody's there. I walked downstairs. Nobody's in the house. Nobody. And these voices were loud enough. It sounded like people downstairs talking. That's when I started thinking there's something not right here.
Very good answer. I like the long answers. Okay, what kinds of DVPs have you encountered? So I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with that question. You kind of answered that already, I'd say. Unless you have something further to go on. Do you think anything else you can tell?
Well, I think it's important to mention that the disembodied voice that got my attention, that prompted me to do all these investigations. No, I didn't know if I saw an orb moving in front of me or what. But anyway, let me get back to that. One of the disembodied voices that I heard one night that got my attention, that prompted me to pick up a camera and start taking pictures and recording. I was lying in bed, and this was on July 23rd, 2017, I believe it was. And I heard walking footsteps up the steps. Now, my door's closed, but I hear walking up the steps. And at this time, my son moved back to Florida. It was just my wife and I in the house. So I hear this walking, and I'm thinking, well, That's too loud to be the cat. So I get up, I open up the door, I look down the steps, there's nobody there. I lay back down in bed, and the TV's going, the fan's going. We started turning on the TV every night and the fan every night because of all the strange noises in the house kept waking us up. But I heard a voice that said, help me, a female voice that said, help me. And I sat up in bed, turned around and looked. And I'm thinking, okay, was that a voice? Is my wife talking in her sleep? Am I hearing things? I laid back down in bed, facing my wife, with my back turned to the closet. And there was tapping on my hip. At the same time, the tapping on my hip, a voice goes, help me, Kent, says my name. I spun around in that bed really fast and looked, and there's nobody there. That's when I knew there is something that is just beyond explanation, and it was time for me to look into this.
Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis while living here?
Couple times I have, but one time was a pretty strong situation that took place. I was laying in bed facing the closet, and my eyes opened up, and I just felt totally numb, my whole body. And I'm looking, trying to move. I can't move. Try to wiggle a toe. Maybe if I can just wiggle a toe, maybe I can snap out of it. I'm trying to yell for my wife to hit me, shake me, do something. And I'm just laying there completely paralyzed. And while I'm laying there paralyzed, I saw like a dark grayish mist, like smoke creeping across the floor. And that mist had an arm come out of it, got a hold of me around my neck and pulled me from the bed. Now, as it's dragging me across the floor towards the closet, I can see myself laying in bed, and I can see my wife on the other side of me. She's on her phone and, just playing a game on her phone. And she's snacking on something, and the TV's going. And I try to say something to her, but I can't get any words out. And this strange whatever it was drags me into the closet and right through the wall into what we call the witch's window room, the room next to ours. And while in that room, it was a complete dark void. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor. It was really dark in there, but you can still see the outline of the closet door, if that makes any sense. You can see where the door is at, but it was like a complete void all around you. And it was like I was completely weightless, and I had no strength at all. The thing let loose of me, and the next thing I know, I'm back laying in my bed, and I was finally able to move. And once I was finally able to move, I sat up in bed to turn around really fast, and my wife is playing on her phone and sitting there eating. Now, what was that? I have no idea. I don't know if that was an out-of-body experience. I don't know if it was just a dream. I don't know if under the circumstances, my brain was just playing tricks on me and I imagined all of it. But the thing that really caught my attention, that thinking, well, I couldn't imagine this. How did I know my wife was sitting on the bed playing on the phone and eating? Because my back was turned to her. And that's what doesn't make sense.
All right, so you start deciding that you're going to document the stuff at some point.
Yep.
What kind of equipment did you have when you first started out? Actually, I know you showed me that phone, so if you want to present that, you go right ahead. So the question is, tell me about the equipment you started with, cameras and editing software.
When I first started looking into this, first thing I did was the night that the female voice had helped me, Kent, the next day on July 24th, I called my brother and, I talked to him about my experiences in this house, and I backed all the way up to everything that's gone on. And I told my brother, I said, look, you know what? I've been denying paranormal activity in the house, but, I said, I have no doubt something's going on in there. He wanted to know how old the house was, and I said, well, it's pretty old. I said, I don't know how old it is, but I'm pretty sure it's from the 1800s. And I said, I'll go across the street, take a couple pictures of the house and send it to you. He says, okay. So I take a couple pictures of the house. I send them to him. And I'm going through my pictures on the phone, getting ready to delete things off of it. And when I was come across the two pictures I sent my brother, in one of the pictures, I noticed something strange in the window. I zoomed in on that picture, and sure enough, there was a grayish white face of a female looking at me across the street out of the bedroom window. And I'm like, what the hell is that? So that night, I decided to take more pictures. I go across the street. I'm taking nighttime pictures. I'm looking through them. And one of the pictures, there's stuff in it that didn't make sense. I'm like, okay, either, I don't know if this is matrixing, take two. I don't know if this is matrixing. Okay, you know what? Skip that word. I don't know if this is pareidolia, my imagination, if I'm just seeing things in the picture, but some stuff in the front yard didn't look right. And I zoomed into these, what looked like figures standing in the front yard, but then I noticed as I zoomed in, there was something on the side of the house that was by the kitchen window that didn't make sense. When I zoomed in on that, it turned out it was a female, naked, looking in the window, and she had no legs. I showed that to my wife. I said, look at this, and what do you think? She goes, who is that? And I said, well, what does it look like to you? She said, it looked like a woman standing at her window naked. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what it looks like to me. Excuse me. So I take these pictures. I gather up what evidence I have, and I contact a paranormal investigator. Because I know nothing about the paranormal investigation. They wanted me to email them the pictures. I emailed them the pictures. And they're looking at the pictures, and they ask me questions. Well, what happened? I talked to them about the disembodied voices I heard, the strange stuff that's gone on in the house. And they said they're very interested. Just the pictures alone caught their attention. So they come to the house, and I know nothing about paranormal equipment. I have no idea what they're doing. All I know is they have instruments that are going crazy, flashing, and they're talking to each other. And one guy says to the other guy, goes, I've never seen this before. He goes, I've never seen my equipment do this. And I interrupted him and said, what do you mean? I said, is your equipment acting strange? He goes, yes, it is. I said, well, what does this mean? And he said, this means there's something here. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's obvious because of what I've gone through. There's no doubt. But what they explained to me that kind of gave me the creeps was they said they've never seen their equipment act like this ever on any investigation they've ever been on. And after they conducted their investigation, they concluded, no doubt you have activity going on here, and it's pretty powerful. I want a second opinion. I contact another paranormal investigator. She comes out, same reaction. Never seen my equipment do this before. And same reaction. Very strong paranormal activity here. And I'm thinking, no fucking shit, bitch. I mean, what the hell do you think I'm going through? Cut that out. No, sorry, I had to add some laughter there because it's, I have a sense of humor. You have to have a sense of humor when dealing with this stuff.
Keep yourself comfortable,
Yeah.
I like the stories you're telling now. They're good.
Yeah, so anyway, back to her. Anyway, she does a paranormal investigation here, and I watched how she did the investigation. And so I'm like, well, I need to do these investigations myself. All I had was this, a cell phone. So I start recording with my cell phone, and I'm listening to the recordings carefully, and I do hear EVPs in them. Not very strong, but I am capturing them. It seems like the more I was recording, the stronger the activity became. So I got another cheap digital camera, and I started recording with that cheap digital camera, and then I started hearing the disembodied voices even more. And while doing these investigations, I kept asking, are you here? Why are you here? Prove to me that you're here. Knock, do this, do that, do. It was all me telling them to do something to prove to me that they're here. Because at this point, regardless of what I experienced, I'm still a skeptic. I want to know if there are spirits here, what kind of spirits are they? Well, I probably ought to eat something. My stomach's growling now. All right, hold on.
Saying that too. I might have heard it on there. I'm like, oh, there's a demon somewhere.
So, yeah, I'm doing all these recordings, and my brother and a couple people that were interested wanted to see the recordings, so I got the recordings to them for them to view the recordings. And, one thing led to another, and that's started capturing paranormal activity on recordings. It wasn't enough proof for me. All right, I'm capturing these voices, but how do I not know that? I know there's spirits here, but how do I know that I'm not capturing some type of radio interference on my phone? So that's why I got another camera. The camera's capturing the same thing. And then I studied into radio type interference. I found out that radio type interference on digital cameras, you don't pick up interference. I mean, period. They're not designed that way. Even if somebody had a CB, your cameras aren't going to pick it up because of the certain diode anyway. I did this big study into that and concluded, yeah, these are definitely EVPs that I'm capturing. But after kind of antagonizing these spirits by asking a lot of questions, the disembodied voices started picking up F you over and over and over again. I got called the F word. The paranormal activity stopped for a while after that picked up. And one day, after a while, you start doubting this again. I had a lot of doubts. Well, all right, was this really real? Is this all in my head? Was it just something that took place and is gone now because I'm not experiencing any more activity? So I was frustrated and went around through the house saying, well, are you guys really real? Were you guys really here? What kind of spirits are you? I mean, you need to prove to me that you're real, or I'm not even going to bother with this anymore. I said, I'm curious if you guys are real. I never believed in you guys before, never believed in the paranormal activity. I don't even know if you're ghosts, but if you're real, you need to prove it to me. I said, because as far as I'm concerned, this is a bunch of BS. And I'm recording, and I'm walking up the steps. I come through the door, and right in front of me, across this door right here in the window, was an apparition that scared the crap out of me. I mean, literally scared me. I've never seen an apparition before in this house. So that proved to me right there, this is very real. And that was a big mistake on my part because these spirits wanted to make sure that I understood they were real. And from that time on, I saw the apparitions.
What is your education level on editing videos?
I worked for a news station for about a year. I had to have knee surgery, and I had to get out of the construction work. And after I had the knee surgery, it was a long period of recovery. So I worked at a news station in a town, and it was a New York Times affiliated station. And I worked as a news photographer, and we edited our videos for the news. If we went with a reporter to do a packet, I'd sit down with the reporter and do the editing. I was trained on editing and, how to put everything together on editing. That's the only training I've ever had. I mean, and I only did that for a year. I was interested in probably trying to get in photography was the main reason why I did that, and to learn a little bit about it. But as far as, technical training, as far as, computers and stuff like that, I had no training at all. In fact, I never had my first computer until I think it was 2009. And even then, I didn't know anything about them. Up to this day, I don't know a whole lot about them.
So you have no education on computer-generated imagery?
No. I mean, I have. In fact, you know what? I use a cheap, bottom-of-the-line Movies Maker 2011 to even put my videos together, because all these other movie maker things they have out there, it's way over my head. I mean, I've downloaded one once, looked at it and looked at it and looked at it and couldn't figure it out and said, you know what, I'm going back to the cheap basic Windows Movie Maker 2011 on my laptop, which is a Windows 7. That I can work. All right. But let me tell you right now, that's limited what you can do with it. There's no voice overlays. There's nothing you can do on that to do special effects. Absolutely nothing.
All right, so the next questions are basically based on your process and the video and all that. If it's going to be a lot of explanation, which seems like you're on a roll, we can keep going. Are you hungry? Do you need a cigarette?
Yeah, you know what? Let's smoke. Are you guys hungry?
Break time. I'm good on food. I don't need to eat.
Okay, I just need to put a couple things in my stomach just to stop the growling noises. You guys want this door open? We were interviewing with it open before.
Is it in the shot?
No.
Okay.
It's the same to me.
On the wide angle, it's the same too.
Oh yeah, I got
I'm interested about that huge shadow behind you. I'm looking there now, and it's still with even all these lights.
Right, it's not. That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it was like this huge head at the shoulders, and it was just like hovering, like.
Yeah, it was interested.
It was like coming in and out of the wall, like phasing in and out. I'm not saying that's paranormal related, but it sure is weird looking.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing I'm really careful about on my videos, I'm really careful to claim something's paranormal. Mm-hmm. Even with the thing that jumped out of the window that's all over the frickin' internet.
Yeah.
I've never once said that was paranormal related. Right. I never said that was a spirit. I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
Personally, I believe that a spirit had an article of my clothing playing with it and took off with it. That's what I personally believe. Mm-hmm. But there again, there's people that analyzed it closely and said, no, that's a spirit. I mean, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I was looking on the floor. That's why I picked up the black teddy bear. I'm like, that's too small.
You're talking about it was a black, see,
jumped out of the window. A lot of people said that was a cat, that.
Well, I don't get it's a cat. When I saw it, I'm like, that looks like fabric.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. But I was like, the way it moved, I mean, you would have seen string. You would have seen stuff if it was set up. You would have seen stuff. I mean, and I didn't see anything like that. And then another time, it looked like the same fabric, but it was coming through. I think that door. It was coming through the crack through the door.
You mean outside the door into the hallway?
Yeah, there was a door, and it was like coming through the crack that was closed.
Yeah.
And the way the camera was moving, I could tell it wasn't reverse footage.
No,
because you could fake it that way, but it wasn't reverse footage because you're talking over it and all that, and this is happening. It's like that's
Well, there's no way to do reverse footage anyway.
Right. It was just insane. And I'm like, what an interesting way to manifest yourself, to fabric looking. You know, it's interesting.
And see, if it was an actual fabric, you know, what's strange is I had a nice black dress shirt that disappeared.
Really?
Yeah. It was a nice black button-up shirt, completely disappeared. I have no idea what happened to it.
Huh. Yeah, I looked at that and I was like, I mean, it moves like fabric, it looks like fabric, but then it's just gone, and it makes, I don't know, man.
I have seen them play with objects. That PlayStation cord there, I walk in the bedroom and it was literally levitating in the air, and I saw it levitating and it just dropped and was swinging back and forth.
I wonder why. Like, when you see them doing stuff and they're like, oh.
I don't know if they're just playing with stuff or if they want my attention.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I've spent hours right here working on videos. There's the bed shaking. There's disembodied voices. Yeah. This will move. There's just all kinds of stuff going on. And my back's turned on. I'm ignoring them, trying to work on the video. It's like, you know, all right, you guys, you know, I'll give you attention here in a little bit.
Or the video where, I believe it's this bed dress, there's something under it moving. And it was pointed out later. You didn't even notice it at the time. See that. And then it's moving, like something's under your bed or under it, but it's too small to be a cat. You know which one I'm talking about? Because I'm sure people pointed out.
See, when I work on that computer, the only screen I have to look at,
small.
that big.
Yeah.
So I miss stuff.
Right.
All right, back to it.
All right, are we good? Yep. Camera's rolling. Okay, let me go ahead and do this. All right, give me some claps again. Cool. And we're good. All right, what's the process like when you're making and editing a video?
Well, it's all raw footage. And when I edit a video, what I do is before I even edit is I go over all the recordings. I listen closely. And then what I do is I run the audio through digital to make all the audio digital. I digitally enhance it. That way I can hear anything that's gone on. It's enhanced. I can hear it better. And once it's digitally enhanced, and these aren't programs I use, it's actual equipment I use, not programs. So there's no programs used to enhance this. This way it's all kept raw. It's not doctored. So I put all the evidence together, the captures, and then what I do is go through all the evidence, listen to what these spirits say. Based on what they said, there's a lot of stuff in an investigation I don't put in the videos because there's too much. But then I just put the videos together based on what they said.
This guy's making an awful lot of noise out there.
Yeah. Remember I said that guy really pisses me off?
He's pissing me off. Wonder how long he's going to be doing that.
For a while.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What led you to make your comments unavailable on your YouTube channel?
Well, it's kind of like this. If you watch Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel, it's not like you can go on the Travel Channel and comment that I know of. And I'm not really into the YouTube channel worried about comments. It's not something that I'm big on. Now, if my YouTube channel was monetized and I had all this activity on the channel, that actually, you know, the more people are interacting on that, the more credits you get if your channel's monetized. Well, due to doxing on the YouTube channel, somebody is doxing, giving personal information about myself and my family. And unfortunately, half the information wasn't even correct. You know, I decided to go ahead and take off the comments on the YouTube channel. It wasn't important for me to have comments on there. It's not like I looked at them anyway. But someone got a hold of me and said, look, somebody's doxing you. And when I saw that, I'm like, you know what? You know, that's not going to happen.
All right, so now we're going to get more into what I call the residents. Um, that you know of, how many spirits are at this house?
Yeah. Wow. Um, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know how many spirits are in this house because every time I ask doing investigations, I get different numbers. How many spirits are consistently in this house at all times that are the same spirits? I'd say at least 6 or 7. How many pass through here? When I do an investigation, can be as high as in the 30s, 40s, 50s. There's no telling how many. Now, are they actually in this house? Or is there some type of a doorway here where I can hear from them wherever they're at? I don't know. I don't fully understand how this works. And that's why I study this. I'm looking for answers to explain how this works.
So you mentioned 5 or 6 maybe that might be here at all times. That's just a guesstimation,
Yeah.
right? Do you know what their names are?
Edmund, Hattie, Abby, Elizabeth, and there's a couple voices. I don't necessarily have their names, but their voices are here all the time.
And there were some others that you think have moved on.
Yeah.
Any names for them?
Well, I do know Rachel's moved on, and she was actually my first encounter here when I heard her disembodied voice. There's one other spirit that I dealt with that moved on, but it wasn't tied to this house. But I have heard from other spirits. They've given me their names. They've talked with me. And I've never heard from them again. It's like they tell me their name. I find out what happened to them. I talk with them about it. You know, it's almost like they just wanted to get the last word in before they left. I don't know. I'm not sure how that works.
All right. So we're gonna go into some history, of the people tied to the place. So, tell me, and it doesn't matter if it can be as long-winded as it needs to be. Okay. Tell me about Edmund Lamb.
Edmund Lamb lived here in Carmel. He was born here. His parents and his grandparents are from the Carmel area. He moved to Bangor for a while to learn the casket building business and undertaking business. And then in the 1880s, he came back here to Carmel and became the undertaker. Not only was he an undertaker, but he was also a cobbler. He had a horse harness sales business behind the Lamb House here. And he did horse buggy repairs. I mean, he was kind of a jack of all trades. From what I've gathered and what I've been able to put together based on, 2 years worth of studies, the Lamb House here was actually put together in sections. And, it's my belief that he wanted to put this here for his undertaking business because he couldn't do his undertaking business or bring bodies to his business behind the house because that was obviously a store. So he had to set up, some place to do his undertaking business and build his caskets separate from his other business. And I believe that's why he put this house together. This main section here is actually an old school building that was here in Carmel that he purchased back in 1898, I believe. And he moved it here in the spot where, the Lamb House now sits. And the dining room and what I call the witch's window room was actually another section that was moved here from another location and attached to the house he built the garage on. And then in 1906, he built what is now the kitchen area on and conducted pretty much a funeral home business out of this house. And he was the undertaker up until 1919. He was married to Hattie Lamb. They had 2 kids, Edna and Gladwin. But other than that, as far as any further information on him. It's kind of limited.
All right, so yeah, I'll let me get that real quick. So tell me about Naomi Mitchell, like her whole story that is known to be true. Basically the story, the same story that you tell in that video when ghosts demand justice.
Naomi Mitchell, she had 11 siblings. She lived on Irish Road with her mother and father, Phineas and Evelyn. And on July 24th, 1912, her mother wasn't feeling good, so Naomi told her mother she's going to go to the store and pick up a few items for her. On her way back from the store, she never made it home. And the next day, they found her body at the corner of Irish and Fuller Road, past a cornfield, and she was raped and murdered. Her throat was slashed. They arrested a man a few days later, J. Sherman Gray, for her murder. J. Sherman Gray ended up pleading guilty for that murder, and he spent the rest of his life in prison. I don't believe J. Sherman Gray murdered her, and neither does the Mitchell family. I believe J. Sherman Gray was a scapegoat, somebody to blame for the murder. And that's based not only on paranormal evidence, but records that I looked into. Things just don't add up. Things don't make sense with his arrest on it. But Naomi Mitchell, when they discovered her body was actually brought here to the Lamb House. And inside this house is where the coroner from Bangor did an autopsy on Naomi right in this house.
And so you mentioned that the Mitchells didn't believe Mr. Gray did it, and you don't believe. So what did Mr. Gray have to say about the murder he was convicted of?
When J. Sherman Gray was captured, he told the sheriff that he had nothing to do with her murder, that he didn't do it. Now, J. Sherman Gray was mentally challenged. And based on records that I've looked into, I don't believe J. Sherman Gray had proper representation, for one. All right. I don't believe he had an attorney that was basically, if he had any attorney at all, when he confessed to this. But what's kind of amazing that caught my attention on this, J. Sherman Gray confessed to this on the understanding that if he confessed to it, they were going to put him in a mental asylum in Bangor. That's where he wanted to go. And I believe that he did confess to it based on the fact that he wanted to go in that mental asylum. But he never went to the mental asylum. He went straight to prison. I believe he was easily coerced by law enforcement back in those days. I personally believe that his interrogation was probably brutal, and based on his mental capacity, he should have never been questioned. He was easily persuaded to confess to it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff like that happen.
Another thing I noticed, his whole conviction is based on his confession. There's no physical evidence. There's no eyewitnesses. In fact, one of the eyewitnesses actually said that when Naomi Mitchell left the store, she was walking down Fuller Road. But when J. Sherman Gray left the store, he was walking up Horseback Road. But then I noticed later on the guy changed his story, saying that J. Sherman Gray doubled back and went down Fuller Road after J. Sherman Gray became a suspect. So his story changed. So there is nothing whatsoever that ties J. Sherman Gray to the murder. There's no clothing article found that belonged to him that had blood all over it. That was a gruesome murder. There was a lot of blood involved, but there's nothing that tied J. Sherman Gray to the murder.
Okay. So let's talk about Rachel Mitchell, and feel free to not only talk about her, but tie in Edmund Lamb into that story, like you've presented before.
Rachel Mitchell was actually born in, hold on, was it 1886? Or 1882, 1884. Excuse me. Hold on, let me. I don't know if I have any records on her birth on my phone, because it's important that we get the date right.
Right.
Here it is. 1892. All right. Rachel Mitchell was born in 1892. Her death date is unknown. Her burial place is unknown. I did talk to a local resident here. He's, much older, and his family has been here. He's a descendant from original settlers here in Carmel. So there's been a lot of information passed down to him. When I talked to him about one of the Mitchell girls that was allegedly committed suicide, he does remember hearing that what happened was she became pregnant out of wedlock, and she was shamed and pretty much basically called the town slut, and he said that she was distraught over it and committed suicide. He didn't know the Mitchell girl's name, but this is called process of elimination. It's easy to pinpoint it was Rachel Mitchell because all of the other Mitchell females all grew up, had children of their own, were married. So Rachel Mitchell is the only female that could have been who he was talking about. Based on my investigations here at the Lamb House, these spirits say that Rachel was murdered. I talked to one of the descendants of the Mitchells, and he did say that Rachel Mitchell did in fact die in the village of Carmel. He didn't have any information how she died, her cause of death, but that, she was younger when she died. So that kind of confirms that Rachel Mitchell did die in the village of Carmel. Now, these spirits claim that she died in this house. And I need to make it clear that this is all based on the paranormal activity, based on what these spirits say. They do claim that Edmund murdered her. Now, and that she was buried in the basement, basically under the house. Now, I can't come out and definitely put my foot down and say Edmund Lamb killed Rachel because, one, we don't have any witnesses to this, except for what these spirits say about it. And we don't have any physical evidence to prove that he did murder her. Now, based on what these spirits said, they said she was shot. Now, if her skeletal remains were found, and you can see in her remains that there's a bullet hole in any of the bone fragments, then I'd say, okay, there's your physical evidence. However, we would have to have remains to confirm that. So it's next to impossible to give, to prove that there's physical evidence that she was in fact murdered. Now, when they claim that she was buried under this house, these spirits pretty much pinpointed exactly where she was at. During one of my investigations, I did go under the house. I had the spirit box going. And when I got up to the section under the kitchen, which is by the kitchen window, Rachel, and we know her voice, said, "You found me." During that investigation, I stopped right there, marked a spot, and assumed that's where she was buried. Now, what's interesting is that exact same spot is by the kitchen window is the exact spot where the female apparition was captured outside looking through the window. And in that exact spot, there's high energy readings in the kitchen. And one time my daughter-in-law came into the kitchen and she's getting ready to sit down and eat and her whole hair stood up. Got pictures of that. Got that on video. There's some type of energy that caused static all around her and hair just literally stood up. Excuse me. So there's a lot of strange events in that one spot. Now later on I went down there, I started digging. I'm thinking, okay, if she's buried here, I need some type of proof. I need to verify what these spirits are saying is true. So I was digging in the spot and, dug pretty deep and the water started coming up out of the ground and it was just a mess. So I took a rake, was raking all that dirt back into the hole that I dug. Well, within that dirt, I found some bone fragments. And I took pictures of these bone fragments. I sent them to an orthopedist. And they said those are definitely foot bone, human foot bone. And they estimated that from the way they looked, it could possibly be a left foot. I don't know how they can tell on that. I don't know. But they said it was left foot bones. And what's strange is during the investigation, an EVP was captured during a spirit box session. The spirit said you found her left foot bones. So it kind of all ties together. Now, the problem is with this, if it was up to me, I'd go down there and dig up the rest of her remains. But unfortunately, when I made a phone call, talked to law enforcement about what I found. I couldn't, tell them, look, this is because of a paranormal investigation. I mean, I found these bones and these spirits told me where they were at. I didn't want them showing up at the door with the men in the white suits, if that makes any sense. So I just explained to them that I was digging and I found bone fragments that appear to be human. And law enforcement explained to me that, well, in the state of Maine, and he asked how old the property was. I said, well, it's definitely from the 1800s. And he said, okay. He goes, and he explained to me in the state of Maine, a lot of family members that died were buried on the property. And more than likely, that could have been somebody's family member or somebody that passed away, and they're buried on the property there, and advised me not to mess with it. Just leave it alone. Don't molest that, section further. And the thing is, and this is what's kind of troubling, is I have to leave it alone because it is against the law to, basically digging up somebody's grave unless you have a court order.
You just killed two questions for me there because I was going to go into that later. I didn't know that you had anything analyzed. That was one of the questions.
Oh, it was analyzed.
So that's super cool. Awesome.
In fact, the skin looks to be human too.
Oh, their skin.
Yeah, there's skin with it, along with a clothing article, a little piece of clothing material.
It makes me wonder if maybe he had that part of that, because he would have had to have buried her there before that part of the house was put on.
Well, there's possibly a door there too that went in the floor, because remember, that's where he did his undertaking work. Mm-hmm. There's probably a door there that he opened up that went down into under the house. I don't know.
Right. All right.
Or it could be our dates might be wrong on when the kitchen was built on. I don't think they are, because the town, he had a building permit back in 1906 to build onto the house, and that was the only section that was built on.
So let's talk about how you came to discover Rachel, like who she was, the stories of her death, the suicide story versus the murder story.
Well,
I don't know. It just keeps not being focused. I keep trying to play with it.
that's got to be a mouse. That's got to be a mouse.
Did you try the main focus button instead of the one on the bottom?
Oh, yeah, by the way, your cameras will definitely go out of focus in here. You have to completely shut them down and restart them to get them to focus right.
Because this one's perfect, but this one keeps whatever it wants. I shift to manual and auto. It's hard to tell on this tiny screen.
Yeah, we have to set a mouse trap up.
I'll have you clap again. Since it's been so long. Yeah, we're so budgeted we couldn't even afford one of those smackers. So yes, the question was, let's talk about how you came to discover Rachel, who she was, and the stories of her death, the suicide story versus the murdered story, and then how she came to move on.
Okay, I think we covered all that.
Well, when I asked that question, we got distracted with a mouse, and then he had to go do something real quick. Did we really touch that? I know we talked about Rachel. Okay, yeah, you're right.
We touched all that.
The same thing. Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right, so Abby. Who is Abby? That's the question, right?
That's kind of debatable. Now, in an investigation, I've been told her last name is Mitchell. And a couple of these spirits said that was Rachel's sister. But based on records, there is no Abby. There's no Abby Mitchell to be found. However, the same person that talked to me about Rachel's, the suicide of Rachel, the old timer here in Carmel, did say that, Rachel's father, Naomi's father, Phineas, his wife and Phineas divorced not long after the death of Naomi. And he told me that, Jesus. Hello?
Hello, this is
Fuck you. Where were we?
Phineas and
this old timer told me that after the divorce between Phineas and Evelyn, that he did father more children. That he had more children of different women. That's based on what he told me. Now, is it possible Abby's one of these children he fathered? I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I have nothing to confirm at this time. And when I do these investigations, I like complete confirmation over and over and over again who somebody is. That's why I will ask him repeatedly. Just like the Naomi Mitchell murder, who killed Naomi? I mean, I asked that so many times, I probably drove these spirits. In fact, I asked that so many times, the guy that killed Naomi Mitchell finally came out and said, I did it. And he told me exactly how he did it. I mean, I have no doubt that was the spirit of the man that actually murdered Naomi. So I like confirmation. I want to make sure that I don't take what these spirits say once or twice and consider that to be concrete information. I haven't got concrete information on Abby. I haven't got anything that can confirm exactly who she is. I know she comes up a lot. In fact, she's been brought up quite a few times in this house. Did she commit suicide? Was she murdered? I don't know. Is she too buried under this house? I don't know. But all the evidence is starting to point to that's a very good possibility. She is buried under this house.
Elizabeth Kimball. What do you know about her?
Elizabeth, I don't know a whole lot either. I mean, I didn't even know about Elizabeth until another paranormal investigator was examining my videos closely, and he analyzed them closely and said that, you know what, there's an Elizabeth that's brought up quite a bit. And I said, well, I didn't even know that. And he said, well, you don't have the right equipment. You're missing a lot. So I started doing an investigation on Elizabeth. I started listening closely, and he gave me some advice on how to, to slow these down. He said, sometimes spirits will talk so fast, you'll miss what they're saying. You need to slow it down. So I did, in fact, do an investigation on Elizabeth. Her name was, in fact, brought up during investigations. How Elizabeth died, I don't know for sure. I did find out that based on the investigation, they said her last name is Kimball. And then later on, I found out Elizabeth Kimball just lived just right up the street here, not too far from the Lamb House here. She is buried at Ruggles Cemetery. She died at age 20. Exactly how she died, what happened to her, I still don't know.
Okay. All right. Tell me about Shadow Dude.
Shadow Dude. When I was doing an investigation out on the porch, there was a face coming up to the window that just stood there staring at me. And I would zoom in on him, and I noticed that he was smiling back at me. I was trying to capture an EVP off of him, a disembodied voice, but the spirit never talked. And this was after I captured a couple of apparitions here in this bedroom, on camera. So, based on what Shadow Dude's face looked like and a couple of apparitions captured here in the bedroom, I assumed that was all of the same spirit. That was a shadow type looking spirit. And not knowing what he was or what his name was, I just named him Shadow Dude. If I'm going to talk about a spirit, I mean, what do I call him? So I just called him Shadow Dude. But as I investigated further, I did learn that the apparition that I was capturing on my front porch was not the same shadowy looking type apparition captured in this house. And the apparition captured out on the porch, who I called Shadow Dude, seemed pretty harmless. I mean, he's quiet, and he seems like he's more curious the way he looks at you through the window. But the shadow apparitions in this house, they're quiet, but they almost seem to appear to startle the crap out of you, which can be a form of an attack. I don't know. I do know, and I can say that I don't investigate spirits that I believe are evil. I leave them alone. I don't mess with them. And I do capture them. Up to this day, I still capture them. But it's something that I don't focus on, because I do not want to give them attention.
Was Shadow Dude the first shadow person you ever saw?
In my life, the shadow apparitions in this house are not the first time I ever saw a shadow apparition. When I was younger, I was actually studying to go into the ministry, church ministry. And one night, there was a black apparition standing in my room that was pure evil. I turned the light on, and that apparition was still standing right in front of me. And it had these like burning red eyes, and it had a gargling, growling voice, and it pointed at me and said, "You are not going to live for God, and I'm going to kill you." And I jumped back, started rebuking that thing, started charging it, because you know what? My thoughts that God's more powerful than any other spirit. He's the most powerful spirit that exists, and I trust in that God, and I went after that apparition, pointed back, rebuking it. and it disappeared. That's the first apparition I've ever encountered. Sometime later, when I was in my 20s, I was laying in bed and I saw a 2-foot apparition at the end of my bed standing there staring at me, and it ran through a wall real fast. I thought maybe that was just a little angel, to be honest with you. I didn't believe in ghosts back in those days, but when I mentioned I did believe in the spirit realms, that's what I mean. I believed in the spirit realms. I believe that people did encounter spirits, but it wasn't humanoid spirits, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah, I was about to ask because I was like, I wanted to be able to keep continuity there because you were saying that you didn't believe in paranormal stuff, but this stuff was happening obviously before that, so I'm glad that you mentioned that too. Good. What about the first time you ever saw Shadow Dude? Tell me about that.
The first time I ever saw him out on the porch, I saw something moving at the window of the front porch. So I zoomed in on his face, and I'm like, that's an apparition. And he's just staring at me, and I'm like, hello? He's just staring at me. I go, well, can you say anything? And then he smiles really big. And it kind of freaked me out. I'm like, oh, what the hell is this? And it kind of gave me the spooks. I'm like, what is that? So it gave me the creeps. I went inside the house, and I went back out the next night and captured him again. And he's just sitting there smiling. So I've seen him over and over and over again. He would show up outside the window, but not once did he ever say anything. Not once did he ever attack. And to me, it looked like a kid staring in the window that was curious. So I figured, well, he must be harmless. So, of course, that's when I named him Shadow Dude. Even my granddaughter was out on the porch with me, and I go, oh, look, it's Shadow Dude. And we zoomed in on him, and my granddaughter's looking at him, and he's sitting there smiling. And so he wasn't something that I was afraid of, and this is the important thing to keep in mind. Even these shadow apparitions that are in the house, they don't attack, but they are something not to underestimate. In other words, don't mess with them, because I believe that if you mess with them, you can end up getting attacked. You can get attacked by them. But I will make it clear, just because you don't get physically attacked doesn't mean you don't get mentally attacked.
Ballpark number, how many times have you encountered that Shadow Dude? Which, and from what I understand, what I think you're telling me is you have Shadow Dude, but then there are other shadow beings here as well. So we're just talking about Shadow Dude real quick.
Right.
How many times do you think you've encountered the harmless Shadow Dude?
I don't know, quite a few times. I mean, out on the front porch quite a bit. You want an estimation, maybe 100. Wow. Just 2 weeks ago he was out there again. But this is the thing. I've gotten much deeper in these investigations, and I do a lot of investigations outside the Lamb house now, and I don't do a whole lot of recordings in this house anymore. Every so often I will record. If something's going on, if there's activity going on, I will pull out the camera and record. But I don't spend a whole lot of time doing investigations at this house anymore.
So most of your investigations now are somewhere else?
Yes, somewhere else. Yeah.
Are you doing that because the more you mentioned before, the more you investigate the house, the higher the activity seems to happen. Are you trying to kind of diffuse that?
You know what? I think that there's a lot of places in this country that have houses or buildings that are known haunted. Sally House, the Axe Murder House. And you get paranormal investigators that go in there to investigate those houses. And you don't really see a whole lot of evidence captured. in every one of these places, including Waverly Hills. You know, you might hear a knock or somebody is explaining, I felt this, something touched me, but you don't actually see strong paranormal activity captured. In the earlier days, you did see this, but nowadays it's very rare you see a capture. I believe that if a place is over-investigated multiple times, that eventually those spirits are just going to get quiet and not say anymore. I mean, the well is going to dry up. I decided to be really careful here at the Lamb House. I want to investigate. I want to solve these mysteries, but I don't want to overdo it to the point that if these spirits get so conditioned when they're asking for help and they say it multiple times and they know for a fact nothing's going to happen with them or nobody's going to help them, they're just going to move on. Now, I'm not talking about moving on in the peace either. They're just going to stop talking. I just feel like it's important not to over-investigate the house, but to continue to investigate, to try to solve these mysteries on who these spirits are and what happened to them. And I don't know if that makes sense, but, you know, it's just when you investigate day after day, yes, the activity gets very strong. And that's another reason why I don't want to investigate too often, is because I don't want to keep the activity constantly stirred up, because we have to live here. You know, and I've slept in this house many nights when investigations were done, and there's times that it can be quite loud.
And so, going back to Shadow Dude real quick, what kind of vibes do you get off of him when you've encountered him? I mean, you said something a little bit briefly a bit ago. Can you go into further detail about like when you're around him, scared, not scared, those kinds of feelings from him?
When I see Shadow Dude, I have no fear whatsoever of him. He hasn't given me any reason to fear him. Now, I did try to piece together who he might be. And I did find out, after doing a lot of research, there was a day here in the village of Carmel, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a younger man that lived here that was a midget. I mean, he was a munchkin. He was very small. And it's my understanding that he was mute. He did not talk. And somebody was telling me that they remember the story of a little midget that did not talk that would wander to the village of Carmel back in the day, just looking through people's windows, looking at them. And as soon as somebody would look at him and wave hi at him, he'd smile really big and wave hi, and then he'd turn around and leave. Now, when I heard that, and Shadow Dude is small. He wasn't, his face wasn't very big. But when I heard that story, I'm like, well, is this the spirit of that midget that was a mute that wandered the streets of Carmel back in the day looking through windows, and once somebody gave him attention, he smiled and then just walked off? Is this his spirit? Because that's exactly what's going on my front door. Something's looking through the window. I wave and say hi, and he smiles back at me, and he's satisfied. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. And I just saw a frickin' dark orb just right at the top of your head.
Really?
It just flashed really big and disappeared. Maybe we ought to get a camera on you.
Yeah, got a camera.
No, seriously, honest to God, I saw
I
it.
believe it.
Remember that dark mist in the that showed up on my shirt and then took off in the basement? It looked just like that. Well, I'll tell you what, for as bright as it is in here, that was pretty distinguished.
Yeah.
I've never seen one that distinguished before.
Where your meter is there?
Yeah.
Not that meter. That meter up there on the chest of drawers. Your EMF. Is that yours?
No.
Oh, it's not your EMF?
No, it's his.
Oh.
Well, I'm just gonna throw it on this trap.
Yeah, I can move it.
I think it's too high.
You think so?
Yeah, I just tried it. Throw it on this really quick.
You guys, I might want to shut this down and do the investigation soon, because we're only going to have so much time to do that. It's almost 5 o'clock now. I mean, it's up to you if you want to continue these questions, but I would recommend that if you want to do an investigation, maybe here tonight would be a good night to do it.
Yeah,
I picked up the interview another day. Tomorrow.
we can if you're cool with us.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, because I've still got. Yeah, right there. I mean, that's like the last section above. I have a few other questions about, which we've already answered the question about Rachel's bones. I want to talk about Edmund's book.
Edmund didn't have a book.
Well.
Oh, the book. Okay, yeah.
That's pretty much the last question, really, other than, I have some kind of like out of the box questions for you, and that's it for our questions. So,
Okay.
I have a handful of questions too.
so I mean, yeah, I mean, we're almost done with questions. I know we've been doing this for a long
Yeah, I'm
time.
sitting here. I'm hearing movements on the steps. I'm hearing like movement in this closet. That was no mouse in the closet.
You don't think so?
No. The scratching noise was, but I heard movement in there that wasn't a mouse.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then I
just
saw
got a
that
few
up
more
above your head,
questions.
and I heard a faint disembodied voice to the right of me.
Yeah. I wonder if they're interested in what we're doing.
Should we just keep going then?
Yeah, we can wrap it up here pretty quickly, and just got a few more questions to go through, and that's that. Everything's recording. You're recording. We're good.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just gonna send this to you really quick.
Okay.
Is your phone gonna make a noise?
No. So tell me about Edmund's book, or the book of shadows. Let's put it that way.
Not even. Well, all right. Hold on a minute.
You know which book I'm talking about, so let's talk about that.
All right. During an hold on. Let me wipe my nose. Get the itching stopping. During an investigation, these spirits kept bringing up a book. Some of it called a Book of Death, a Shadow Book. You know, there was different names for it. But this is the thing that I've learned when doing investigations. They may call that book a certain thing, but it's based on what they're trying to point out. You know, when they mention this book, I'm looking for an old ancient book that could have been the Book of Death, a shadow book. I mean, something that the way they describe this book, you know, they're simplifying it. I'm overcomplicating it in my mind that I'm looking for this old ancient book. Well, when they kept telling me it was in my bedroom during these investigations, I'm like, what book? I mean, you know, I went through this whole house searching for this book, but they kept saying it's in the bedroom. Well, during one of my investigations, once again, they said it was in the bedroom. And as it turned out, the book they were talking about was this book right here. And this book is A History of Carmel. And in this book, when you talked about death, everybody that died up until 1996 is in this book. So that made sense to me. Okay, the Book of Death. I mean, you know, people that died is in this book. So that's why they would refer to it as the Book of Death. You know, if they referred to it as the Shadow Book, you know, there's a time people would talk about shadow as a resemblance or a metaphor to what happened in the past, a shadow of somebody's past. You know, so it kind of made sense what they were talking about. So, yeah, they told me that there's information in this book, and one day I did an investigation. They wanted information, and I opened, you know, what page, they mentioned page 4. I open it up, and it's just a map. I mean, well, this don't make sense. What am I supposed to be looking at here? And when I look closer at the map, there's some things that kind of stood out to me. I'm like, wow, I mean, that does look kind of strange. So based on that map, that led me into a deep investigation. And in that investigation, I came across a lot of information that helped me understand other reasons why this paranormal activity is so strong in this house. It answered a lot of questions. There.
So, okay, like you say it answered a lot of questions and stuff like that. What did you learn from that book? I mean, what was it that was like, there's my answer right there?
I learned that there's a really strong possibility that the village of Karma was set up a specific way based on specific beliefs, the way these roads were set up, and everything was designed a certain way based on certain beliefs of a secret society back in those days that believed in certain things, that some would say it's based on pagan religion. Some would say it's based on other things. I mean, but I believe that what these spirits are trying to show me is the way the village of Karma was set up. And it was set up in such a way that the Lamb House is actually sitting here in a triangle. And when I did that investigation into the triangle, that led me down some other paths of looking into the secret societies back in those days and what they believed in. And they did, in fact, have a symbol of a triangle. And that kind of answered a lot of questions on why these spirits wanted me to look at this book. Let me give you a warning right now off record. You don't want to go any further than that.
That's fine. Yeah, we're moving on to the next question.
Yeah. There's a lot of Freemasons here. A lot of them. And I have to live around here.
Right.
There's so much I could have said about that, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I left it out.
You were trying to avoid saying Freemasons.
Yeah.
Because I'm aware of the story because I watched, and it's such a good story. It's really interesting, and then how it ties into, which I noticed you didn't mention, the lineage kind of leaking down into your family. Is that something that you just want to avoid talking about?
Well, I don't even want to bring up the Masons. My
Well, not the Masons, but the lineage of...
Oh, of Jude?
Yeah.
Nah. We can talk about that later.
Okay. So one thing I've noticed while watching your videos is you seem extremely compelled to solve these mysteries.
Yeah.
And of the spirits who live here.
Wait. I definitely heard a child's voice.
I heard that too.
My grandson's not here.
Yeah, it sounded like it was downstairs. All right. One other quick question real quick. I've noticed on a lot of your footage, there are two things that these spirits say to you very often. Help and Kent.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that there are spirits here who are actually trying to help you rather than having you help them?
You know what? That's very possible. And the reason why I say that's very possible is because they provide me with information that gives me a lot of answers on the things that happened here. And the Lamb House here is like a library of information. It's like an encyclopedia book. If you have a question that you need from a spirit and you need an answer from them, they'll answer your question. And it's mind-boggling the information they provide. It is possible that when they say help Kent, that they are helping Kent. They're helping me. I know some of them do ask for help that, a lot of people contact me wanting me to get, and I heard something in the closet.
I thought I saw that curtain move a touch. That's why I was looking over there. My eyes are starting to water too.
A lot of people contact me and said, well, you need to get a medium inside the house. All right, you need to have mediums come in there to help these spirits. I've brought 4 different mediums in this house. All 4 of them ran. All right. You know, this isn't where you just thought you heard from a spirit inside your mind, which most mediums say they hear the spirit inside their minds. They have this gift to hear them. This was much more than that. They literally heard their voices talking, which scared the crap out of them. So, you know, it makes me question, you know, a lot of mediums' abilities. Are they real mediums or are they just claim mediums? But I don't think that these spirits want help based on what mediums say they can provide. I think these spirits want to give information to the living to explain to the living what happened to them.
What's the scariest thing you ever experienced here, and did you capture it on video?
The most frightening experience I ever had, and this was because it caught me so off guard. I was doing some recordings and I was in the middle of talking about, I can't remember what I was talking about, but I was talking about something. I was walking up the steps. I walk into the bedroom here and turn around the corner from my door, and standing right in front of me is an apparition, a dark apparition. That startled me so bad. That's probably the worst thing that ever startled me. Not because it was necessarily just the apparition there, but it was because that was so unexpected. I did not expect that to happen.
Sorry. Now, do you think that was Shadow Dude?
No.
So you don't think that
I don't think that was Shadow Dude.
Yeah.
No. And all the other apparitions captured in this house, in this room, I don't believe that's Shadow Dude. I don't think Shadow Dude comes into the house.
How many people around here know who you are and know your story?
Probably not a whole lot.
Yeah.
You know, not locally here, no.
And you've had a lot of investigators in this house?
I've had quite a few.
Okay.
And every one of those investigators, every one of them has said this is the most powerful paranormal activity they've ever witnessed. Every one of them. And I'm not saying they're big-time investigators. They're pretty much all amateurs. But I did have one that came in here last weekend. He came up from Massachusetts. He's a veteran paranormal investigator, and I got him on camera saying, never seen anything like this before.
All right, we're good on questions then.
I have one last one.
Oh, go ahead.
So, you used to be a non-believer in the paranormal, is that correct?
Yeah.
What was the thing that had to happen here that finally got you to start believing?
That was the night when the female apparition, take 2. What really got my attention was the night when there's tapping on my hip and the female voice said, "Help me, Kent." That was the first time I've ever heard my name mentioned audibly by a spirit. And that definitely got my attention.
That was a turnaround.
It was like this loud, you guys, like, "Help me, Kent." Like that loud.
Wow.
I mean, and I'm like, and I knew for a fact that wasn't my wife talking in her sleep. You know, she didn't reach all the way under the bed up through and tap me on the hip. That was definitely a spirit. And that wasn't a muscle twitch in my hip either. That was definitely somebody tapping on my hip.
I want to mention it here too. Like I said earlier, before any newspaper articles and all that stuff, anything to do with the land house that you have, I'd like to get some of that. Any living photos, like people being alive, of the people mentioned, like Edmund, Naomi, Rachel, any of those people that we have access to?
What do you mean?
Like any photos of those people that exist of them alive. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I got photos I got one photo of Naomi Mitchell. I've had photos of Edmund Lim.
And then any pictures of young Kent and his family to kind of...
That won't be available.
You're not going to put that? No. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's...
I can provide you with a picture of me standing next to an ambulance.
Just something to play whenever we're talking about.
I've got a picture that I was. The town of Newport gave me a basket of fruit, a gift basket, because I did CPR on somebody and revived them. You know, in Newport. That was kind of a strange story. In fact, I wish I can bring that up in my next Newport video, but I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
You know, but the guy I brought, and that's kind of a weird story because back then I still didn't believe in the paranormal. But when I saw the guy and took his pulse, I'm like, oh, he's dead. Right. I mean, he's already discolored, and 9 times out of 99.999% of the time, you won't revive them because they're already brain dead. Yeah. And normally I would have just said, all right, you know what, they need to call the coroner. But that day when I looked at him, and I've done CPR on a lot of people, and mainly you do the CPR just to provide the family with everything was done that you could possibly do to save them. You know, that's the only reason why you do that. Right. You know, it's mainly for the family to deal with the death. But, you know, when I looked at that guy, you know, it's like I didn't hear a voice, but I had this really strong feeling that in the way he was looking at me, because he was dead, his eyes weren't even straight. But it's almost like he was trying to tell me he wasn't ready to go yet, you know, and I pulled him out of that vehicle and started CPR on him. And what's kind of strange is he lived 2 weeks, long enough to say goodbye to everybody, and then he died. Wow. You know, so I don't know.
Wasn't the guy that lived here before you said his name was Kevin?
Yeah.
Is he available?
I've been trying to get a hold of him. He said he'd come and do the interview, but okay. I haven't been able to get a hold of him.
Well, if you don't have to get a hold of him today or whatever, if you can get a hold of him while we're here, I've got just a few questions. I can go to him.
Yeah.
Where does he live?
I don't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can go to him if it's close enough. I really only have a few questions that I have listed right now, but that's just because I started it and then moved on to something else.
If I can't find him, he got back. This is off the record. Is our camera still rolling?